Shalom Pitbulls! Because the last video on the subject was well received and it was basically just about putting others down because they are bad, today we are going to do the same. Here is the second part about the video of cars you should not buy unless you're completely insane. According to Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and still expecting different results. That's exactly what the engineers of the BMW 7 Series E65 thought. Until the facelift at the end of 2005, the vehicle was quite frowned upon. On one hand, this was due to the not so nice appearance because from the front the car looks as if it had been in a techno club for a week without sleep. And on the other hand, the electrics were as reliable as my ex-girlfriend. Because an extremely large number of control units were installed and these often caused a lot of problems. Not only is the car described by most as very ugly, no, it has also poor internal values.
This is
Furthermore, the operation of the iDrive system is problematic. In order to operate it, you must be able to see, even as a blind person. Because it was programmed very awkwardly. A degree in rocket science is an advantage here, if you want to understand the electrics of this car. In addition to any assistance that worked reluctantly, the soft paint in the interior also liked to come off. It's not even the corrosive welding that's to blame, but the people who designed the car.
This is a terrible design.
The engine and transmission were usually less of a problem. Since the BMW 7 Series was mostly used as a long-distance vehicle, it's hard to find one with few miles over time. Even if you could afford such a vehicle, it would only be recommended to get a facelift. This fixed most of the electronic problems. But that's still nothing compared to our next car on the list. We are talking about the first generation Mercedes ML. This is the first SUV that Mercedes brought to the market at that time. Mercedes had just merged with Chrysler and thus adopted the satanic, American, philosophy of life. Cheap cars for cheap people and tell them it's high quality. Like its successors, this ML was made somewhere in Alabama. Alabama, after all, is known for incest, which is tradition for southern states and explains the origins of one or two viewers of this channel. This is also reflected in the build quality. Who would have thought that drunk rednecks with 2 teeth and their sister as wife wouldn't do a good job? The production was then partially moved to Austria until Mercedes got a handle on the quality problems. Even though not that many MLs were built in Austria, you can still figure out from the sticker somewhere on the door if it says made in Austria or has a shotgun painted on it. Cars from that era also all had problems with rust. The puke brown plague can even infest the brake lines here. Steering, interior and electrics were in most cases also trash. Still, if you're into ugly fat critters with deformed builds, you're better off looking at facelift models. Those were a little less problematic. Again, the engine and transmission caused few problems. Thanks to the diesel engine, you're also guaranteed attention at the next modern hippie festival. But it's not just old bags that are good for nothing. For example, the Mercedes G63 AMG. Anyone who has ever driven this angular hunk knows how awesome it is, even though it steers like crap. Driving one is associated with massive erections and arrogance complexes, but owning one is less awesome.
come on, man.
The tax alone is about $500 annually. Insurance is also likely to cost at least $1,500 to $2,000 annually. Gas guzzled 25 gallons in my car at the time and I had to take it to the shop every other month. If you're not a Sam Smith fan, you better look at another car. Let's move on to a hipster vehicle that originated in Florida, the Tesla Model S. A used Tesla from the early years may be grossly negligent. You can find it quickly when it comes to Tesla problems. There were problems with the air conditioning, steering, various control units, crooked brake disc, cooling of the battery, misaligned wheels, autonomous driving, and the door handles that cannot be extended. The materials used are not the best inside as well as outside, and yet the thing has sold over 300,000 units. However, many bugs were often fixed during the warranty period, and that lasted for 4 years. If you buy a used Tesla and something breaks, only a specialist workshop can help, and that is probably expensive, for monopolistic reasons, since they are not on every corner. Most people will probably have to go directly to Tesla and get a free meme from Elon Musk on top of the high bill. Because global warming was already to blame for no snow 20 years ago, and this year warming is also to blame for snow, it should be noted that the Tesla is prone to failure in cold weather. If you're unlucky, water will still get to the car and your electrics will start to go haywire. A bit of a bummer considering the vehicle is a computer on tires. Buying a Tesla out of warranty may be as smart as taking heroin. Next up is the Bentley Continental. This was assembled starting in 2003 by Brits who got VW parts. The Bentley shares the base with the VW Phaeton, VW's first attempt at a luxury class diva. Exactly there was the problem.
We don't care.
Let me tell you.
The first generations were, until the facelift, completely rubbish because VW wanted to set standards with all kinds of electric assistance. They didn't really succeed, but the result was various electric defects and sometimes problems with the air suspension of the chassis, the automatic transmission and the all-wheel drive system. Wear parts, of course, also cost more, even if they are from VW. I mean, it says Bentley on it, and writing on it immediately makes it more valuable. If anything has to be done to the engine, it will be very expensive, because you have to open the engine to get to it. The car weighs almost 2.5 tons and has a 6-liter W12 B-turbo engine. So it swallows like my ex-girlfriend, or like the G-Class. Insuring a Bentley might not be a good idea, because not every insurance company is willing to insure a used Bentley. In the meantime, the car is relatively cheap to get, but you can get 8s just as cheaply. But the Bentley isn't the only one who belongs to the VW mother cake. Porsche also feeds off it. Porsche also had a problem with its first SUVs. This wasn't even due to the clunky design, but rather to the questionable quality. The interior looks good at first glance, but as soon as you start fiddling with yourself on the car, you notice the cheap plastic.
This is not okay.
If there wasn't a Porsche emblem, you might as well be sitting in a big Golf. VW felt very powerful because they are their own supplier. The bigger problem with the Cayennes was the high fuel consumption, the air suspension and sometimes the electrics. In addition, the vehicles were still super likely to be stolen, which also makes the insurance costs even higher. An old Porsche Cayenne isn't so cheap for nothing. Depending on your negotiation skills, you can also get the spouse of the owner on top when buying it.
Is immeasurable.
It would theoretically be smarter to buy a facelift model, but the interior hasn't changed a bit there. I only advise you to buy this car if you like man's feet and think Joe Biden is the best president ever.
Over $1.2 trillion.
Since we are on a roll right now, we might as well move on to the next corporate brother, the Audi S6 C6. Audi decided to install a naturally aspirated V10 engine. This was also available in the S8. And it is often said that this is the same engine as in the Lamborghini Gallardo. They share the same base, but they are still different engines. Since the V10 engines could be had very cheaply used, this attracted various misguided souls who treated the car like an ex-girlfriend.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
The timing chain problems were mostly due to previous owners not keeping oil change intervals. The cuts and the 8 lambda sensors like to make shenanigans, for which the engine has to come out. The undersized starter also benefits from this special treatment. After all, with the water pump, the engine doesn't necessarily have to come out, even if Audi thinks it does. Don't be fooled, Pitbulls. Inasmuch as you can't find a repair shop that you can pay with your organs, the upkeep will be very expensive. At launch, engines like to shine with piston skips, after which they got a replacement engine. If this happened before 2009, there's another problem here as well. The installed engine had a faulty plasma coating on the cylinder walls. In conjunction with corked pistons, this coating wears off more quickly and then ensures even higher oil consumption. An early oil change is therefore extremely advantageous here. The most important thing about a car with such an engine is the history, not the mileage.
What?
Nevertheless, a facelift model is better because you have fewer problems. Insurance, tax and brakes remain expensive. The S8 had ceramic brakes as standard and that can cost a few $1,000s to change. So if you have to decide, girlfriend or V10, because you can't afford both. Next up is an Asian. Japanese vehicles are known to be very robust and take every driving action, but not the Nissan GTR R35. Even if it has an extremely cool engine which can be tuned easily, it is not intended for most normal, low-income earners.
How?
Without being able to make the money loose again to buy the car a second time, it makes no sense to get one of these. The transmission likes to go down the drain and cost about $25,000 new. However, there are some companies that specialize in this and can reinforce the transmission for a few $1,000s, which I would recommend as it minimizes the chances of the transmission blowing up in your face. After all, Nissan doesn't offer replacement parts, only complete transmissions. The engines are also a little bit bitchy because they all have a big problem with the bearing in the flywheel housing. The Brembo brakes were also due with some load. Smaller problem areas like speakers or water in the rear of the car are not out of the question either. In the end, the car is still tremendously awesome and still makes a statement, but you should still plan on a thick financial cushion if you want to buy one. Pitbulls, that is it for today's verbal genital gala. Write to me in the comments what you want to see next. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Cars and Kings to push the algorithm. See you soon with a new verbal mess. Cheers!